so we're back here again in the Heights room after a very long hiatus. We want to welcome back all our viewers slash listeners, and today in the Heights room we have my brethren Ja, Benoit, and my new brethren Kyle Fortuné.
Yes.
So, how are you doing, fellas? What's your word?
We good, everything good. Trying to survive in this corona times.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Corona times. It's different times, and from what all indications showing is like not anything that's gonna stop anytime soon,
Unfortunately.
right? I mean, and then on top of the Corona, we have now talk of hurricane or something to that effect.
One
So
thing to the next.
we hope everybody out there getting themselves in order for that in the event that it does happen.
Yeah.
So just to start us off, I have known Ja for like how long now, boy? Like I would say about 15 years or so. That's
We close to 20.
close to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And I knew you basically through the music scene, but as time progressed, we have collaborated on other things as well, namely film work and so on. So just for our viewers, listeners, how was it that you, as an individual, especially someone growing up in Trinidad, where film is not really like a go-to career and art on the whole, what made you make that decision to get into that kind of line of work or that pursuit?
Well, funny enough, the simplest explanation would be that it was really, for me, my immersion into counterculture at a young age in
Right.
general. The spark for my filmmaking career was actually when I first decided to pick up a skateboard.
Right.
The when it the two things that go hand in hand with skateboarding is filming, right? So you need to get your stuff online,
Because you had to film your tricks and hope you get a sponsor and thing.
right.
Yeah.
So we started off. My brother and I started off with just a small video camera with the sole purpose of trying to just archive and document
Yeah, and that's the days when
skateboarding
everybody
footage.
have
Yeah,
the
little mini
handicut.
DV,
Yeah.
that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really the ambition then to try to create media based on new different styles of innovation in terms of expression and stuff like that, mainly through like extreme sports and those type of things, right?
Right.
To bring it to the forefront of well, not just Trinidad, but like
Yeah.
Caribbean people in general,
Yeah.
because I mean it's something that I learned at a young age and quickly became quite
Yeah, adapt.
adept into it and
And-
immersed. And
And you study a little bit of filming.
well,
Canada?
is actually my well, again the whole skateboarding again being the catalyst
Right.
was one of the main reasons why I chose to go to Canada, Toronto, to further my schooling in
Yeah.
film and editing specifically.
Right.
But it was really because of the fact that, well, I used to frequent going to Canada
Yeah.
specifically for skateboarding,
Skate stuff.
skate
So you
parks.
still skate?
Right, true.
Right.
Can't
true.
stop. Well,
Right.
Down for Life is the name of a
Yeah.
documentary I've been working on for essentially about 10 years now, right?
Yeah, and then you have Normal, which is the company, the what you call the
Yes, well, Normal Films,
studios.
yes, it would be the production company slash art studio,
Right.
right? That actually came out of, well, yeah, this whole type of thing. So, skateboarding then is very closely related to music and
Yeah.
that type of stuff.
Definitely.
And then if you look at the culture as well, it would be more so, things like hip hop, reggae, punk rock, right? Which is one of the main aspects of the band that I was one of the founding members of was Anti Everything, which is a standing punk rock band
Yeah.
out of Trinidad
And
and Tobago.
still is,
Still out
Right
there.
now, I back and forth with those guys talking about their new album, because before
Yeah.
election every every
it's a
5 years
staple.
they
Yeah.
always put out a album before election because
Right.
they always had a bun down the whole process and what going on with our elections. And I think this election is one of the probably one of the most let just
Boy.
I don't even want to get into that right now, yeah. But yeah,
But yeah, I mean, essentially that's where everything come from, right? It came from the whole just we as youths, all of us handed and branded one specific type of juice to drink,
Yeah.
in one type of way to put it, and it would really be on your standard forms of education, information, expression, music. So all of my inspiration for getting into any one of the passions that I have these days was really more of learning about things that I had no specific background or
right. Venturing.
something new,
Yeah.
something unknown then, right? That was not necessarily showcased in any type of either positive or negative light here, but especially with the things that I became closest with were actually some of the quote unquote more taboo styles of expression. Just in general, Trinidad being more of your standard calypso soca oriented, and then here we are in the early 2000s hardcore punk rock,
Yeah.
all corners of the country. And you know 2 albums in, we start to realize that it is not something that was just really a form of expression for us, but also a form of expression for the people who were also as highly interested in that style of expression that we shared
Yeah.
similar vicinities with, and they then found that avenue through that type of music and that type of expression and all of the things that go with it to find their own way now to get their own niche going and not have to conform to your standard pockets of
Yeah, and like even the nature of the entity itself, like anti everything is because I am what I would consider part of the collective. You know?
Shrimper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just be that and not just that anti collective
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the thing is that there have been shows that I sing for the band
Right.
because the singer couldn't make it and
Yeah.
it's like because it don't matter who sing it, it's like it don't matter who, once the message gets out.
And
Yeah.
that's
You know what I
exactly
mean? And it's
what
all
it
about the
is.
message now. But coming on to Kyle.
Yeah.
Kyle, so unlike Ja, we don't have any prior history, so I really
Right.
need to know who is Kyle. You know what I mean? But
Understood.
from what I know so far is that you went to Fatima
Correct.
and you are a lawyer at this point in time.
Yes,
right?
attorney.
So coming across from Mr. Renaissance Artsman here,
Right.
the man of the law, right?
Right.
How did Kyle become a lawyer? What drew you to that field?
Well, I will have to summarize as best as I can.
Yeah, but you have
Because
time in
it's,
the matter.
it's a long story. Okay. So I went to Fatima. After Fatima, I decided that I had enough studying and so on. So I wanted to work and make some money. I remember I got a job in a place called Trinidad Tissues Limited. They manufacture and distribute toilet paper and so on. That was in the early 2000s when I came out of Fatima. Subsequent to that, I would have gone to the OJT. They still have OJT,
Yeah, it
still have it.
exists.
Okay.
Sometimes it's be non-existent in terms of dormant.
Right.
But yeah, recently, I think it was back on the up.
Right. I remember going into OJT. I was working with what was then BWIA in the technical library.
Right.
Back then, it was something like $1,400 a month. Right. That was the
And that was
the stipend that
that
we
was
would
a
have
stipend
received.
with A levels.
No, that was just O levels.
O levels, okay.
Yeah. So after I decided that I was going to study business management, so I went to SBCS. After 1 year of that, I decided this is not for me.
Right.
I'm not feeling this again.
Yeah. Not that, about that MBA life.
Yeah. Always being somebody interested in philosophical pursuits
Right.
and the mind and so on.
Right.
I then went on to study psychology in Costat.
Okay.
So I would have studied that for 2 years until I decided, you know what? I really decided to drop the psychology because I thought about how am I going to make money from this psychology.
And that's
when
what
it's
you're
all
faced
done.
with, eh? That's
Yeah,
what you're faced
the
with.
realities
you
of
could,
life.
Yeah, you could be so ultra passionate about that field, But then when you had to face it now out there, there aren't opportunities in
And that's
Trinidad
the
and
thing.
Tobago for those fields. There
That's
aren't
the
there
thing.
aren't the opportunities, and you know that's how, again, you're looking at areas of study where you need to read and retain that knowledge and
Yeah.
delve into the topic with your all.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that would have let you picking up the law.
Well, after the psychology,
Mm-hmm.
after I realized it wasn't making sense, I sat and I did some deep introspection and I thought to myself, what do I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with, I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make this world a better place.
Right,
Whatever that meant at that time.
yeah.
And I also want to do something that I can make a fair amount that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not dependent on
Yeah,
anybody or
yeah.
anything.
You're not struggling.
Yeah. So it just so happened that I saw an advertisement in the papers in that time about University of London offering the degree program,
Right.
but through a long distance course.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The school K. Beckles and Associates in Port of Spain was offering it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my degree there.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of my degree, well, all that time I was working a number of different places.
Right.
And at the end of the degree, you have the option of applying to go to Hugh Woodin in Trinidad, or you could go to England and do what you call a LPC or a BPC.
Right.
So I did the LPC at the University of Westminster.
Right. So
No,
you went to England for it.
Yes, I went to England. Now that it was something else. At that point in time, it was like 100,000 TT
Yeah.
was the tuition. And it was approximately 100,000 TT as well for living expenses for the year because
yeah.
I chose to do it in 1 year.
Right.
Right? So in order to make that money, I did a number of things. I worked KFC as a delivery driver
Right.
for a delivery rider, for
Yeah,
years
yeah.
while I was doing my degree. I also worked taxi, Tunapuna.
So alright, that means biker.
Yeah,
or-
motorcycle delivery.
So he was one of
rider.
the KFC bike men then.
Yeah.
but
I
yeah.
was that guy.
Yeah, all day.
I was that guy. Many people still know me
30
as,
minutes
as
of
that
free.
guy. Yeah.
You making it there? Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, after that, I ended up, I was conducting Maxi. My dad had a Maxi from
Right.
Kirib to Shogunas,
Right,
Greenman
right,
Maxi.
right.
I eventually took over that Maxi and was working
Mhm.
in Maxi myself up until the point where I left to go to England.
Right.
So I went to England. I got a distinction on the LPC course. Subsequent to that, I got offered an internship in a commercial law firm in London called New Media Law LLP,
Okay.
specializing in entertainment and media law.
Oh,
So,
okay. That's
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I did an internship there. It was I just stayed there for a month,
Mhm.
and then I decided to come back to Trinidad.
Right.
A lot of people ask me, well, why you didn't stay up there?
Well,
You
that's
know,
like,
you had-
well, same thing I would ask. Well, why?
well, as it is now, back then I still had long hair. My skin was still dark,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
had locks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you feel Rasta people and black people discriminated against in Trinidad, you can
Yeah.
imagine what it was like
Yeah.
in London.
Right.
It wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. Besides that, I couldn't take the cool.
Yeah.
The cool
No,
weather.
So it wasn't ideal for you.
Yeah,
many
exactly. More
ways.
opportunities in Trinidad.
Right.
So I would have returned to Trinidad shortly after. When I returned to Trinidad, I applied to work a number of different places. I got an opportunity, Mr. Beckles, the same school that I would have taught at before. He gave me an opportunity to lecture at the school in Port of Spain. So between 2014 to 2017, I would have taught criminal law, contract law, company law in that school in Port
Okay.
of Spain.
Okay.
From 2018 to present, I'm currently teaching in University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus,
Mhm.
2 legal courses,
Mhm.
one on prosecution on the courts and the next one on business and commercial law.
Okay.
All right, and well, I have a private practice since I came back, based in Tunapuna.
Right. And that would be your work that you have to
Correct.
do in the legal
Correct.
system. So coming back to something I just said there about discrimination,
Yeah.
right? So you would say that while you were at studying in England, that you would have felt at points discriminated against because of how you look and that kind of thing.
Definitely.
And you know that right now England has this whole issue of Brexit and all of this,
Yeah.
which a lot of people would say is motivated also by the populace being threatened by the amount of immigrants and all of that comes with being part of the
European
European
Union.
Union and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that fact that you felt like that, and then the climate right now and a lot of what's being talked about has to deal with that topic of discrimination, but more so the issue of systemic racism,
Yeah.
and then also that of police brutality.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, we are filming right now in the ending, well, almost at the end of July, right?
2020.
2020, and a lot has happened. A lot has happened over the past few months. We've had the coronavirus change the entire order of things. We have had the lockdown of borders, right, and all the different measures taken by our government, who, for all intents and purposes, did a decent job with controlling the spread of the virus. But the economic effects have been felt by the population, right? And with that now being the situation all over the world, we had in the midst of all that the emergence of, not the emergence of, but the killing of George Floyd, which led to
Right.
the emergence of all this call to action.
Yeah.
Because BLM existed before,
Yeah.
you know, but it took on a whole new life.
I believe it was Trayvon Martin. That was
That's one of the first. Yeah, that's the first that would
that's
have
what
brought the
spurred-
BLM.
Yes, yes.
And that Trayvon Martin was like 10 years ago.
Right.
You know, and since Trayvon, there have been, you know, countless.
Yeah.
Until we could surely can't count them on one hand.
Yeah.
The amount of killings of that nature,
Yeah.
right? Now, my thing to you guys, you know, is that there are so many people who are chiming in on this conversation about Black Lives Matter, and then this whole thing about all lives matter and blah blah blah. We know we've heard it all before, right? But do you at this point in time, how important, in your opinion, Kyle, and we'll move on to Ja after, how important do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement is to the society and where we at right now? Is it as you know, what's your take on it? Let me know. I'll talk for you.
Well, your question was on my opinion on the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes.
Now, there's some ambiguation there because the Black Lives Matter movement,
True.
in
True.
the eyes of some, such as myself, would view the Black Lives Matter movement as the collective consciousness of persons worldwide that
Yes.
stand for the rights of all persons, but with a specific interest in black persons being historically disenfranchised and
Right.
so on.
Right.
However, a lot of persons, that's not their perspective. That's when you talk about Black Lives Matter movement, you talk about the registered Black Lives Matter movement with the three founders,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And that's an important distinction. to
Very
be
much
made.
so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing now. People would bring up BLM criticize them and talk about, well, you know who's the founders and and then I'm like, yeah, but every person who utters the hashtag or whatever,
Yeah.
the notion Black Lives Matter, wear the jersey, not it's like the internet itself. It's like an organism now.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really draw the lines as to what really is Black Lives Matter at this point. Yes, there is a actual organization,
Yeah.
but the sentiment and the anti-racist sentiments of BLM
Yeah.
echo and resonate with people all over the world.
I agree.
So there is a bit of a gray area, and you're right to say that.
Yeah.
That when we talk about BLM, are we talking about BLM, the actual the organization with their certain founders and their actions, or should we be talking about the anti-racist sentiment worldwide?
Yeah.
And so, do you think that BLM itself is a bit of how to put it, like a circus at this point in time, and the term and what it represents to people? Or,
I think that the broad discourse on the whole BLM movement seems to be largely aligned with ideological left thinkers and ideological right thinkers, with Democrats and persons with certain agendas. Well, Democrats and with certain ideologies, certain persons that want to push rights for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rights like gay rights, for example, rights for minorities,
Mm-hmm.
etc.,
Mm-hmm.
traditionally aligned with democratic left, goes
Mhm.
up against the ideological right,
Mhm.
mostly the Republicans,
Mhm.
mostly the Christian right, as they so label them. And they tend to be the ones to say, well, no, it's not that Black Lives Matter, but
Mhm.
all lives
Mhm.
matter.
Mhm.
But the problem with that
Mhm.
is that it takes away,
Mhm.
again, from the historical disenfranchisement of black persons
Mhm.
historically.
It's factual stuff, you know.
Yeah, and as you would have said, it's systemic.
Yes.
It's systemic in a lot of institutions that we would
No, you
have.
have the left and you have the right. You have the Democrats and the Republicans, but then you have people who would say, and you see the thing about it. Sometimes when you try to play centrist, you can sometimes lean to the side that is, well, the one that actually is denying the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, but there is the fact that police brutality is something that, as much as it affects the black community, which it does in a disproportionate level,
Yeah.
it also affects the wider community. The brutality of police in let's say the states, right? And the some speakers, there are speakers who come out to kind of draw that line and say, like, people like, I think, like Coleman Hughes, or and there's an next guy, I forget his name. They speak as African American speakers, and they say that, oh, well, some one of them said that when people talk about the problem as being a black problem, they take away from the actual problem, because there's a bigger problem. And then at the whole internet thing, where, like, if like the people who were in the same situation as Trayvon,
Right.
who are white, because there were people like that,
Yes.
that that no one speaks about it as the. So I know, and so my thing is, um I understand that thinking as well,
Yeah.
right? I understand that thinking as well, but I also think that, as I said, if you look to, well, champion that centrist kind of look at it, you also kind of still detract from a reality, which is that there is as we say, a urgency for it to
Right.
be addressed. And
Yeah.
Well, I think, like, if I was just thinking here how
Yeah.
to put it into a picture, right?
yeah,
Um, let us take the assumption that there is collective a collective pressure.
yeah. Fix that mic straight up to you
Straight
there.
up.
Yeah.
Let us say that there's a collective pressure, right? That is underneath all of human populations throughout the world in different places. There's there's no there's probably no place on the planet you could go and not face some level of you know inequality to a certain extent based on either your race, your sex, your gender, any of those things, right? There's no
Religion.
your religion. There's no pocket that you can go to, at least in a quote unquote civilized world, right? That would escape these things. Now, if we were to look at it from the perspective as there is an undeniable pressure that rests on the human psyche from as a collective, right? As a collective, there's an undeniable. If we want to look at it from a fundamental perspective of just the human condition, as you could call it, there is a certain level of how to put it, unknown factors that we have no choice but to try to come to terms with on our own. As only as individuals we'd be able to make cases of these things, like our place in the earth, our place in the cosmos as a wider thing. All of those things, they don't really have answers to a lot of these things, right? So there
Right.
is a lot of pressure on humans in general, just without any other societal factors that would cause humans to be in certain levels of distress without addressing these certain topics, right? Now, if we were to look at the pressure now building up underneath all of us, all over the planet, I don't really see a need to distinguish, at least the people who would be learned in our westernized model of history. As Kyle was saying, the historical systemic, um, not just discrimination, but also, you see, discrimination would still leave to some level of some. It would still leave the mind to believe that there's still some level of humanity behind it. You know, in terms of, it's not discrimination on all forms, but just discrimination. Like, let's just say we would look at it as discrimination as we don't the greater 1% or something like that does not
Right.
want to end the lives of the poorer population.
Right.
It's not that they have that as their agenda. So we would use more semantics for the case and say it was like, discriminate, meaning that on some level of life, level of
Right.
enjoyment, we are going
Yeah.
to interject into these people's standard,
Right.
right? And throw off the level in some type of
Right.
way. So discrimination still leaves like the mind to believe that there's still some humanity involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know to be like things like the transatlantic slave trade and those type of things, there was absolutely no like
Middle ground.
humanity connected
Yeah.
to those things now. It
Yeah.
was all about business.
Yeah. Greed.
It was about power. It was about control. There was no level of humanity involved in it, right?
Right.
So, is no surprise that under the collective pressure that the geyser that was first sprouted would be from the ones in which at all levels
Right.
there was always this building up. There was some people have it
So
less,
so you're trying to say that that is not a surprise that the descendants of
yes,
of
exactly.
the crimes of history, such as the transatlantic slave trade, that
And African people in general,
right, African people in general.
that it would be from their not so-called perspective,
But
but
like the experience.
throughout their experience in
Yeah.
which it was brought to light. Because I mean, it at any point in time through the past 400 years, 500 years, when you look back and you want to look at disenfranchised people, well, yeah, there's obviously more recent events like the Holocaust and things like
Right,
that, right?
right.
But however, if you were to flip any page of history,
Mm-hmm.
300 years back, there was always the issue of a certain group, a certain demographic of people based on their geographical
Location where they were
location,
born and all
right?
of that.
that have had a completely different experience from 90% of the wider population of the planet,
Right.
right? And so it's not really hard to see as to why, yeah, at least if we look at it in a wider historical
Well, that's the
context,
thing. Why the historical context?
as
is
to why,
some people aren't able to do that.
because many people might think that
Yeah.
this is a new idea, like the
Yeah.
idea that Black Lives Matter or any statement of that
Yeah.
is somehow a novel invention of the 21st
Right,
century, now,
right. As
Yeah.
if,
which is
as
very,
if
very
somebody ups and say, well, all of a sudden this is something to talk about.
right.
Yeah.
So giving it that political side of argument, it really belittles, I believe, the entire.
So so put in a more direct way. You're trying to say that, because I understand it's a very layered topic and it's very complicated, and I have to be really careful how you
Yeah,
say certain
yeah.
things. But that last statement you made, what are you exactly trying to say?
Well, in the fact that we think it's something that's debatable.
Right. But
There
it
is no there,
There is no
Shit.
debate that what? There is no debate that what? What?
there is no debate that human rights have been very how to put it, the withholding then of human rights
Right.
has been the basis
Yes.
of our civilization.
Civilization, yeah,
It
yeah.
they our place as people in westernized civilization,
I
as you
agree.
would put it.
I agree.
There is no starting point beyond the disenfranchisement of certain groups of people. I mean, it started off with the indigenous of
Yes.
all of the different lands,
Yes, like I
right?
mean,
To
like
start.
whenever I teach my students, I always have to make it a point. I'm like, we all have to remember that a few years ago,
This land was
less than
belonged to other
200,
people.
less than
Yeah.
200. Some of us were not here,
Right.
and then some of us have been here enslaved,
Yeah.
right? That your great grandparents were slaves, right? Because a lot of children don't even they don't even think about it, eh? Because
Yeah.
if
Exactly.
they're living in this space today, everything they're distracted, they go hear about it in class, but you have to let them know, hey, and that's how the people who still live here, all of them are dead.
Yeah.
Exactly.
know?
They're not. There is no one to tell their tale.
Yeah, they are dead. We
Right.
have a indigenous First Peoples Day. Well, we had one off, and we have the communities, but they are also very watered down. There's nobody with that full bloodline.
As you mentioned that, what is your perspective on that?
On what?
So we have Emancipation Day, we have Indian Arrival Day, we have all these other days
My-
celebrated
well,
every
my
year.
perspective
What
was
if
that
this-
that day should have been made a day for the rest of our history.
Yeah.
And that we should have just take out one of the holidays that probably doesn't have as much, like probably Corpus Christi or something that doesn't
Yeah.
have probably as much of a, like, because if you're trying to balance out things, our entire thing with us being the rainbow people and the multicultural nation of Trinidad and Tobago is that we give everybody, every creed and race, equal place.
Yeah.
So we have the Shout Out Baptist get something, holiday wise and thing. And at this point in time, I would say okay, just for, because since you bring it up, since you bring up that thing about that,
Yeah.
what is Corpus Christi? What is it?
Well, it's Latin for Body of Christ.
Right, so it's a
It's a
Christian
Christian
thing.
holiday.
So
as most of our holidays are.
Right, all right. We have Easter and we have Christmas.
Yeah.
So in terms of the disparity there, well, not big disparity, but the point is we could take out one of those and we could have made that Indigenous Day a day every, because to remember that the fact is that these people,
Yeah.
this was their land,
Well-
and they have the communities that still exist somewhat.
I would
And-
agree with you.
And I think it's a no-brainer. But at the
Yeah.
same time, a lot of people don't think about these things. They don't
Exactly.
think about how important it is. It brings up the whole
Well,
Columbus statue thing.
You see,
right?
it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to deduce why people would not like to yearly revisit their sins of the past.
Right.
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 So it's not so much as a question of whether or not we as a people feel the need to express our gratitude to the indigenous people of the lands before and all of these things. It really comes down to an issue of understanding history without the veil of this type of fantasy illusion we have in where we were gifted these lands then. And
Well, you see,
then,
this is the problem now. The problem is that when you look at that discussion about Columbus, right? People will say that so the person who would be against that sentiment of moving the statue, the main thing, first and foremost, the Columbus statue issue has never been a new one. It just like rights for people, civil rights and black rights and all these things. It's not new, and it's just that at certain points in time you get a greater social upheaval and the topic becomes center stage, right? So because of what's going on around the world, that topic became a little more center stage for Trinidadians, but for those who have been talking about it, they have been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, right, a lot of people would say things like this. They would say, it's erasing history, right? And then they would say, well, then everything that named after something that, like Port of Spain, can be Port of Spain no more.
Yeah.
And this and that, and all that. And they say, where does it stop? Where do you draw the line? And, I find those things to be kind of stupid. Because in my opinion, putting up a statue of someone is not how the be all and end all of historical documentation. And a statue is put up of someone to revere them. You don't put up a statue to remember. You can't put up a statue of Hitler in the middle of Germany.
Yeah.
You can't put a big swastika in the middle of Germany because they have come to terms with the fact that that is part of their history that they don't want to celebrate.
Right.
So we as people who are now independent and all of this, right? I can't understand why we can't see that yes, the hands of history have done their deeds and we are here because of history, but does that mean that we have to accept the fact that what happened before should not be criticized and we should not say, well, you know what, let's put him in a museum and not have him stand in the streets? People would say this next thing too, and this was real get me, right? You'll hear people say, if it wasn't for Columbus, we would not be here.
Well.
And I don't understand where to begin with that. You know? I'm not gonna lie, I love being a Trinidadian. You know, I love the fact that you know that because of what happened in history, this is for whatever reason I am here and this is my home, you know, and whatever. But that does not mean that I have to say that thanks to Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
I am here because he did not intend for that.
Well, I mean, if we want to go far back
Yeah.
and we want to take this tank in business, we tank wherever happened right outside the Oort cloud that send the asteroid in our direction. That's send the asteroid in our direction.
Yeah.
How much ever years ago,
Right.
right? If we want to really start to go back,
Yeah.
right? But to me, this is what I think is really the issue here. The issue about wanting to keep historical statues and all of these things. Now, listen. Humans really have a tendency to associate themselves with permanence now. And very, very fleeting attempts have been made by all pockets of civilization everywhere, every corner of the globe, in order to achieve and sustain some type of level of cosmic permanence. I mean, it might be planetary from our perspective. Okay, we would like to keep things the way they are here.
Yeah.
But in standard speaking, we know it's not just about keeping a street name, the name it is, and all these type of things. Is to assert a certain level of this is our mark that we made on history, right? Now, the way I see it is not a big deal to change the names of any of these things or to
Yeah.
take down any of these things because you actually, as a society, you have, historically speaking, you have two ways about going about these things. Is either you do it with a choice, like how we as a people here now have a choice to change the direction of stuff, or it happens the way it happened with the Amerindians. Here was not always called Trinidad. We have no problem changing the name to that.
Just Kyrie.
We forgot about
Irie.
all the other things that what it meant and all of those things. The statues of the people who were revered in the past. Well, we have no idea who they are to begin with. So this idea of the fear of starting anew because it may not
Where does
be
it stop?
right. Well,
Yeah,
I believe that again that goes in the notion that is a misconception, at least of my understanding. In culture is not something that we should really try to promote or procreate or develop in any kind of way other than one in which has a collective driven force behind it. Now, all cultures in the past have never had collective driven. Now many people would say differently. Yes, there have been great democratic societies throughout the past and all that. We all know that those things are not really steeped in reality, right? When we think about what culture means to us, culture is actually somebody or group of people saying, well, listen, we have figured out what reality is, right? And these are the rules in which you must abide by in order to function as a person who would like to receive as many benefits or as they put in, right? In some type of mutualistic type of way. But culture is actually more so a device, I would see, none other than something that limits the notion of any type of human mental development or expansion or learning or knowledge or information. Because if we as a society or as a greater civilization on the whole believe that we have things figured out then in any way, shape, or form in order to promote these ideas as, good practices or any type of judgment on it. Our evidence would be
Yeah.
very, very sparse to support those claims, sir.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of people they battle with, that the religion that they're born into,
Yeah.
and the fact that that what if they don't feel to partake in any religion per se, and it's just that those are traditions that have been handed down, and they have a certain amount of weight to them because they have allowed people. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to psychology. As a man studies psychology,
Briefly.
briefly, but
Yeah.
and as an educated fellow, so you'll know what I mean when I say that the human being is one who wants to belong.
Yeah.
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 And people need a sense of belonging, and that is what the majority of organization systems in place are geared towards, making people feel that they belong to something, but using that innate need to bring profit in
Yeah.
some way or form. Exploitation. Now the thing is, we talk about systemic racism, we talk about these inherent problems, we talk about Columbus, we talk about the indigenous,
I would like to touch on one thing that you said earlier. You in passing you would have mentioned that yes, we independent now, Trinidad and Tobago independent and all that. So I assume you're referring to 1962 and all of that, right? But I just want to make one point though, right? So anybody with a brief cursory understanding of the basic elements of law will know that nations are governed by three arms of government.
right.
There's the executive arm, run by the political party of the day. The executive arm also encompasses the police, army, etc. Right? There's the legislative arm, which consists of the members of parliament, democratically elected members who go and decide which legislation to pass and so on. Then there's the judicial arm, right? That's the final arm, made up of, the judiciaries, attorneys, all of that, right? But when you look at Trinidad and Tobago, where's our final court of appeal?
Not here.
Our final court of appeal is 5,000 miles away in England.
Right.
So when you look at the three arms of government, one of the arms of government,
Still.
yeah,
it's not
it's not in
us.
Trinidad.
Right.
So I
it's
really
a
question.
farce.
It
No,
is.
it's
Well,
a farce.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
it seems to be that way.
in the sense of us being independent
Yeah.
and self-sustaining and all of this.
Yeah,
No,
definitely.
and it's true because at the end of the day, I always say that and that's why I say if we so independent, why we can't.
Well.
The fact is, you can see from the populace that we aren't independent thinkers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how can we be an independent nation?
Well, you see, as Kyle was saying there, right? All of those things come back to the understanding of breaking the veils of these illusions. Now, in terms of, we as people would be from the perspective that you were shown there, right? Now, anybody who has any background in, it doesn't have to be as much as a legal background, but any type of social work, anything like that, they're fully well aware of the fact that nothing can be done without the oversee by someone else
Right.
higher up along the chain of
But
command.
we can't even protest without the
Right.
police saying you're allowed to
So
gather.
now, when you look at something like that, and we have it would have been perfectly benign if the citizens of our country were able to understand that, all right, as an individual, we believe as the same way as the country is supposed to believe. We are independent people. We have we have rights to exercise within our own discretions and these type of things. But the individual would be from the same perspective that was drawn there, would be no less independent as let us say a dog on a leash.
Right.
No, you can go any direction in which you please. You can wrap yourself around in full circles.
Yeah.
You don't see the restraint as something that is present at, as long as you keep on a certain distance. But what
Yeah.
happens anytime you see the dog try to outrun the person who walking them? right away the dog knows that the restraint is real. Before that, there would be no way for them to identify that there
Yeah.
was any type of
Restraint.
right constraint
Yeah.
happening. So with us now, I believe that is one of the reasons why we don't see the constraint, because remember, we are being walked along at a perfect pace,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
The countries now that decide to make the dash for it, because the illusion of freedom was so sold to them that they like the idea of any type of bond was foreign. They would be the ones to feel that constraint and restraint first, and they would probably react it a lot quicker than the people who are just mindlessly walking and casually strolling along.
Yeah.
Which is why the people who are at the forefronts of like political debates and all of these type of things would obviously feel the chain to a greater extent than those that
Yeah.
not in that that not at the speed,
When I think about all of these things, especially the wealth gap that we speak of, right?
Yeah.
And we look at what happened in Trinidad recently. We had our own riots of a sort. I think I would say that since my adulthood and probably my entire conscious life, because the coup took place when I was 3,
Right.
and this was nothing like a coup at all, but I would say this was one of the more extreme moments in our nation's political instability, socio-political, because it happens in smaller pockets. It was the first time I saw there were different fires in a radius, and then it have it in Monte Grand. It had one, and then it had it so going down the east-west corridor. And in Corinth, right?
Yeah.
In Corinth there was a fire. Now the thing is, right, it's very complicated now with the bigger picture of worldwide anti-racist thing. Now in Trinidad, I would say that yes, racism exists. However, it is not the same.
Not the same brand.
It's not the same brand
No,
as
no.
as to what we are dealing with in terms of nations that are run by the like America is white America. At the end of the day, white
Yeah.
America runs America.
Yeah.
I mean, and Trinidad, we know for a fact that there are people pulling the strings in government and everything,
Yeah.
pulling the strings of the government and everything, who might not fall into any one of the categories that we're talking about right now. And that's something, again, we think about how independent we really are, right? But there is a police brutality problem in Trinidad,
Yeah.
right? And there's also a criminal element problem.
Yeah.
And we have something that we have more crime. Some years we have more murders in Trinidad and Tobago than in murders in New York City
Yeah.
for a year. Like one of those years gone
That's
by,
correct.
we had more murders here than in the whole of New York City for a year. We know this. We know how bad it is. The police, however, don't have a handle on the situation. And yet now, we see the police, that what happened recently came on the eve of a killing of 3 individuals in a car.
Right.
Now, just like George Floyd, people might want to make the distinction that, George Floyd had a criminal past. Maybe these fellas did as well. However, where do we draw the line now with the powers that we give the police in order to say, well, yeah, people involved in criminal activity, does that mean you can go up to a car of men driving without any arrests and kill?
Yeah.
How does that factor into us and our justice system? Is our justice system itself is a next thing altogether? What we really dealing with in Trinidad? What is our real problem with these with the quote unquote ghetto? What is the reason for the fact that we can't get these people out of this cycle? When you look at what happened recently, there was a lot of youths in the streets. A lot
Yeah.
of youths. A lot of these youths are people who weren't in school because of COVID-19. They have this energy there. They're putting it behind something. But when we do go back out to school and think, is it going to be any better for these youths? We know for a fact that there's high failure rates in maths and English across the country, the student population across the country. My thing is, what is the problem, and how do we tackle it? What do you all think is the real problem with this whole thing? Why were they in the streets?
I don't think it's so much of having a singular problem. I think
Right.
it's
There's
a lot of issues.
problems.
There's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But I honestly believe that there are a lot of things wrong with the system itself. I mean, there are a lot of things that we take for granted. For instance, we take it for granted that if a police officer is there, you say some profanity, you curse, and you take it for granted, well, it's normal, he could lock you up and he's right to do so. But if you examine the legal systems throughout the world, I mean, I would say that's quite archaic. Especially in circumstances where the officers themselves use profanity left, right, and center.
Yeah, well,
Why is that still in our law books?
Yeah, well, that is one that I would always say needs to change long time now. But
Right.
Continuing.
Yeah.
No, well, here what you I think you should go ahead and state it from the points that we know could be legally back then, because
Well,
you would
it's-
definitely have more knowledge on that.
Well,
On the other hand, will take another spin on it, but I'll
From my
Right.
perspective, I've seen working in the courts, working in the High Court, magistrates courts, I mean, you name it. I have seen very clearly that there's systemic issues. There are many systemic issues that really, really need to be sorted. That whole obscene language thing is one of them. Imagine you could have a criminal record, right? You could have a criminal record, not get a visa, not get a job
Right.
for using obscene language.
that I would say this happen, right? The police could pass in the crack block, right? And it have a set of youths on the corner, and it have a bag of crack over in the culvert or wherever.
Everybody can lock up.
Everybody getting hold.
Yeah.
Now at that moment in time, I don't know how, and I mean, I don't know what's the legal things if you're in the vicinity of it, or
It's called constructive possession.
so like if you are close to where they might be. Okay, when
The
the
police have
pass,
to prove that you had knowledge and control of that.
and
So what
that
you
is
would
hard
find,
to do.
Exactly. So what you would find is that many times persons get dragged through the court process. They have to pay tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. They have to go and sign in the station every day for the matter to be ultimately dismissed. And you would find that happens quite often with those type of matters that you just referred
No,
to.
look at this, right? And this is just me looking at some realities that people might take for granted. You have people living in areas that had the blocks and thing, right? You have human beings living in these areas. Not every human being who live in the block is a pusher.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the youths and them will congregate and whatever. Now, some of them might be slanging, some of them might not. Whatever. Right? You pass now. Okay, and you pull from a side and you arrest from a side. You throw them in the cell. In the morning, no lawyer show up.
Yeah.
Nobody show up. Right? Then I know of a situation, right, where all of them get hold and they're telling the most the weakest link, right,
Yeah.
who may not even have a big part to play in anything because he's the weakest link. He's probably just a partner.
tell them
Yeah.
to take the fall for it.
Right, them telling this man, right, but here what he seen, boy, if none of we ain't plead guilty, all of we had to stay. You know, I mean, we're getting off so. But if you say it's yours and we done nothing, we will go handle it and bail you out.
Yeah.
And he will say whatever because he's saying, well, word, right?
Yeah.
He's the one who really know what's going on. You know how it is go with groups of men.
Yeah, manipulation.
You know, right? You know how the manipulating is go. Then yes, and then obviously nobody are coming to check for he for no bail and thing
Lost to
after.
the system
Yeah.
after that.
And then this fella stuck in that system or whatever, right? And my point is, you could go and pass and pick up all these youths, but then you could go and shoot up people, right? Without arresting first or whatever. You go and no shots fired, and then nobody can get arrested yet. Was anyone arrested for that yet?
No.
No.
As far as I'm aware, they suspended the officers
Yes.
Right.
pending investigation.
Pending, they suspended them pending investigation. That which is not even a slap on your wrist in
So,
my books.
All right. To me, again,
Mm-hmm.
they have one layer level of discussion to talk about it. Was
Yeah.
the problem? Was the problem with police? Was the problem with
Mm-hmm.
the drug war? All of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask yourself, all right, so what is the historical role of the police force? As far back as you go, when you read, you pull up articles, you read articles, you see, okay, so the police force is really just evolved branch of the slave catcher department attached to plantations, right? They may have evolved to claim to do certain. In other pockets of the world, there are many police forces who are there to protect and serve,
Right.
without a question of a doubt,
Right.
the citizens of their nation,
Right.
right? However, it does not negate the fact that the police system
Mm-hmm.
was something that was essentially invented to protect the rich and their assets, and to be able to round up and catch their property from escaping,
Right.
for the guarding of large storages of grain and stock, cattle, livestock, and those type of things. Those were the first people who are assigned the duty of looking over up. That is where the role then came in of somebody who is handed the authority. The police is not working, the policeman is not working on behalf of himself.
Right.
He does not have to claim that he is for the upholding of law and all of these
It's
type
not-
of things
it's
as a
not-
personal.
It is not his desire.
It is not. It does not have to be.
It doesn't have to.
Right?
Be. Correct.
So they are employees of a group of people with certain vested interests, right? In order to protect those interests,
Right.
Which is why the arms are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was just really to serve,
Mm-hmm.
there would be no pistols, right?
Right.
Right. The protect part is not necessary. See, again, semantics has us under the implication, the false understanding that the protect in most cases means protect the population.
Yeah.
If the police was formed as some type of humanitarian aid in the early beginnings, then we can go and extrapolate and make these claims. But we have to just look at it historically. What is the context of this organization being formed in its initial stages? It is to protect the interests and the assets of the people in charge of wider populations, right?
Right.
So in order for us to have the discussion about whether or not, to me, again, is not it goes systematic oppression and police are literally
Hand in hand.
not even hand in hand. It
One
is the
born
same
out of
word.
the other- one is born out of the other.
It's the same thing.
Right.
There can be no systematic oppression without the police.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would
There
agree.
can't be police without systematic oppression. There is no way to escape those two branches of
Right.
government, if you would like to call it that. Right?
And that's scary.
This is
because
under
that's-
the
because-
guise of keeping a certain level of civilization. As we were talking about profanity laws. The fact that there, at least to me, is something that can be distinguished as proper English and not proper English is steeped in colonialism and essentially white supremacy. Because we measure the standard of our speech by the Queen's English.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Profanity and these type of things would be no less different than being jailed for slang.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's that. These are it there is no
Well-
no like a determining factor in which somebody could say what I am saying is profane unless it is held in relation to something that is deemed not profane.
Well, I for one find that I find that the contradictions we face as citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, especially being so developed and want to be on nations, first world nations developed list
Right,
and all of
right,
this,
right.
and you look at other developed nations. I'm not saying that we had to copy anybody or whatever, but at the same time, it is what it is. We live in a world of influence and
Yeah.
persuasion.
Yeah.
That is how it is, and the reality is that in Trinidad we don't have freedom of speech.
Yeah.
We don't have freedom of expression, right? And that's something that I find so alarming, because you can say the wrong thing at the wrong time and get in trouble. You can say the wrong word. I don't see how in this day and age a word, whether it be fuck or whatever it is, right, could allow for someone to be arrested in this day and age. I could understand in archaic days,
Right.
because of the thinking, but in this day and age, who are we fooling? And
Well,
then the person who said the thing about Rowley's wife and child being raped or whatever, which was in poor taste and not something to be like, well, that's a great thing to say, of course. I mean, but again, that man was arrested and kept for 3 days, right, for making a Facebook post, and there's no law in place to deal with the Facebook post.
Well.
And he was charged on, well, he was charged with something about to do telegrams or something like that.
Right.
That kind of archaic kind of
Semantics.
because they said that like a telephone call or telegram, that thing,
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And even him, I would not say what he said was a threat. I would not say, because if you look at the context of what he said, although it was in poor taste, he's a random man blurting out on Facebook something that I would not call a threat, but at the same time someone might say, well, that's a threat. And I mean, again, it comes down to the fact that at certain points in time you could say something about the wrong person,
Well.
and you all of a sudden your freedom is taken away, but the next person could tell the next man, well, I am coming to kill you tonight in your house, partner, and well,
Yeah.
that's
And
normal.
nothing is done.
Nothing can be done about
Yeah.
that. And it is sad, because in Trinidad we live in a country where people all the time they do things that are less than wholesome to each other, right? People accuse people of things, they threaten people, beat people, rob people all the time, within families and neighborhoods, and and people just be like, we can't get involved
Yeah.
with that, domestic abuse, all these things.
Yeah.
You can't put a finger on
Right.
people, but as soon as somebody make the wrong post on Facebook about the wrong person, they in custody for 3 days.
So we see again, in just speaking about the conversation, that the evidence shows itself, right? That the protection part of the law is really not about us, right? It has no. It's not a. There is no room for that argument from their perspective. There's no reason to justify.
when
It's
you
just
say
like
us,
this.
what you mean by us?
Us meaning the people who have no ability
To persuade through money.
Yeah, or no, not persuade,
Power.
but to get any type of acquire any type of control on any socioeconomic basis that could deem us to be of a
Yeah, because in
control.
Trinidad it comes down to who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how the law will work for you.
But
Yeah.
so
And outside of even the legal system and the courts, we're talking about just the
Right.
police.
so
Yeah.
Police went shot by somebody house if there's somebody.
Yeah.
So but call him, but son phone could get
that's
fined.
but that's why that's
could
what
find his
but,
phone in
but
no
that's
time.
what that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's because it's not for. Well, all right. I mean, we ask these questions at very very tender ages. I know your boy Blinks will tell you.
Mhm.
If you want to find back how far back we asking these questions, you could go and listen to Anti first album, right? We have a song called Social Circus, which is the end of the
Yeah.
last track.
Yeah.
It says, "What good is civil liberty
Mhm.
in a society that fails to act civil? What good is freedom of speech there's no freedom of the intellect. Why should we value freedom of speech in a country where we really we the first thing when somebody says something that is outside of the box of your standard conformity, which may be in most cases from an unbiased intellectual concerned citizen question and answering perspective, right away is immediately chastised as, hey, yeah, what you doing? You think you running everything? You think you know better than everybody? But in most cases, the people who are asking these questions are doing a lot more than the people who are just ignoring them, right? So when you're looking at government and you're asking a government to explain why you're allowing a tyrannical mafia system of control and dictatorship through these different forms of like more or less government sanctioned gangs that exist in every country. They would be disguised as whichever police department here, there, and everywhere. Now, again, it's not saying that every single police officer
Exactly.
shares the sentiment of these things, but
It
they
is-
should.
it is-
And I think that's an important point to make
Yeah,
as
they
well.
should. But
There are good
you
people
know,
in the
Yeah,
police service, and there are good
definitely.
policemen. In New York and thing, there are good policemen.
Yeah.
You know,
They
all
are-
over the world.
that is honestly, it is one of the if taken seriously in the vow that that is on most of these things here, would be one of the most admirable, heroic jobs that a human being could put as on their
Yeah.
resume as they would like to take. Is something that literally says that, listen, I am going to put myself between the harm that you may face as a civilian and intercede when necessary at any point in time. And that type of archetype of social worker or anything like that is very well welcomed in most societies. Is when the problem turns into
Yes.
a controlling.
The problem is that
Right.
they sell it as that.
Yeah.
They sell it. The media, our innate need to think that, there's a nobility in it. People join it. A lot of people would join it, their dad was a policeman or whatever,
Yeah,
know.
I have many family
right?
members that
Yeah.
are
No,
like ex-police officers.
But at the
and
same
stuff like
time, then you see the inherent problems within the system that they have joined.
that. Yeah.
Now, and it's not their fault, but at the end of the day, how do we address it? What do you think about what we're talking about there, Kyla, about the police and then the legal system too, and generally, like, where do you see the real problems coming from? There's a disjoint too. There's like our legal system and the police system and how we deal with the problems that the average man faces. There's a discord. There's not it doesn't seem to serve the interests of the common man.
It seems to me generally to be a lack of critical analysis on pertinent points and pertinent issues regarding everything. We don't do that. We don't critically analyze anything. We join a system, we join a group, and okay, this is how things being done. Well, I will do it this way too. It mightn't make any sense, but I will do it this way too. And then you teach the next person that way, and this is how it goes. When you look at things like the whole war on drugs, right? It started off in America. As we all know, the history now is commercial interests that were behind the war on drugs, racist,
Well,
considerations.
That would be the main driving force behind it. It wasn't even before. It was even before economics. It was about keeping a certain group of people down.
Yeah, the blacks and the Mexicans controlling the hippie culture.
Right. So you're looking at things like the war on drugs, all these things, and we're saying that what?
Well, we basically just copy and paste, follow fashion,
Right,
as
same thing,
usual.
Now we have a little ease up with the decriminalization of marijuana because it has been done, and it's become more mainstream now. It's something that we could have been doing a long time ago, knowing the fact that you don't have to lock up a youth man for a joint. I mean that's supposed to be understood now. But you see the war on drugs and this whole thing about the propaganda that people choose to feed into.
Yeah.
No, I mean we know the most glaring thing is that they will say marijuana is a gateway drug and all that, marijuana is a drug, and people say it's not a drug. It's a drug. I would say it's a drug. I say coffee is a drug. I say
Yeah.
sugar is a drug.
It
Drugs
is.
out there, right?
It is.
We having drugs out there. It's changing how people is. It's changing mood, changing feelings. It's needed to. It can be dependent on it, whatever, right? But when you look at the effects, and you could tell me a man could go and drink a bottle of punch like normal,
Yeah.
and then you watch a man have smoking a joint. We have
Well.
there is inherent biases in the system, and it
Yeah.
also comes down to what serves the interests of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when we talk about capitalism, right, that's a big thing you're getting into there, because I mean, we don't know what it is to not exist in a capitalist system. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are glaring issues with the capitalist system, and the capitalist system is the system by which all the issues we're talking about right now have
Right.
come to found strength.
And I think there's a connection between the war on drugs and capitalism,
Right.
in the sense that, you know, capitalism, they need the sheep, they need the cogs in the machine, they need the persons to do the dog work, like we would say, you know. And the problem is, you can't have workers who are supposed to be doing the dog work expanding the mind in any kind of way whatsoever. You can't have them getting different perspectives to ask yourself, wait now,
They want
why are you
efficient
doing all
workers
this?
who
Why
just
are you
fuck-
doing
Well,
all this
alright.
hard work?
Again, if you want to look into that, what are the two drugs that are actually scheduled? Remember, we all talk about the ills of drug, but what there are two?
At four?
There are two government-sanctioned drugs,
Where in the US?
even in
Trinidad.
even- no, in every part
Right,
of the world,
Right.
that you can freely indulge in on companies' time,
Tobacco and alcohol.
And that's
coffee.
money. And
And
coffee.
yeah.
Right?
And that's money making thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Those things
so
have
we
been-
understand that they are government sanctioned
From a
drugs
long time now,
that
those
keep the
industries-
worker bees going, right? But
Yeah.
as Kyle was talking about the capitalism and the drug war, now beside the fact that they do need to keep, you know, people in line and all of these things, yeah, okay, so that's one part of it, right?
Right.
But the next major part of it, which plays an even bigger role into that, is the business side of the prison industrial complex, right?
Right.
Now, prisons in America are not like the ones that are in other parts of the world, right? United States has the biggest population of incarcerated people on the planet, right?
They want to lock up people.
The
That is
the,
a
the,
known
the,
thing.
the system that governs the prisons and jails and all of these things are privatized systems
Yeah, and they get money for the
in
more
which
inmates.
people spend hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying on in order to win contracts and all these different types of things in order to further their brand, right, of you know, either architecture or food services or any of those things. So you have these needs to fill a certain gap of consumer, and that consumer is really one that profits off of human beings being herded like cattle into, you know, very very small boxes for
Yeah.
the majority of their lives until you know, somebody decides that they're fit to return to society and these types of things. But it's not a moral issue so much as losing control, I believe, in terms of giving people access to mind altering or mind expanding chemicals in any type of way. Because I mean, there's no real way that the government or any person on the planet could stop nature from doing his work, right? Like, there are tens of thousands of psychoactive plants and chemicals and the whole plethora that you could go through in terms of
Right, yeah,
you
in
know,
Trinidad we have
full
plenty
pharmaceutical cocktails can
growing
be
all
made
over.
all the
Yeah, in
nature,
Trinidad,
right?
I believe we have something like 4 to 8 native species of
Right.
psilocybin mushroom.
Exactly, but
Right
if
here in
we
Trinidad.
and if we were really looking out for public interest, right? Is there any law that goes against like harvesting poisonous plants in any type of way, shape, or form? Like you could point
Poison,
any
no.
legislation that could
No.
stop you from picking like
Stinging nettle and rubbing it on you.
you could like right. So it right and but actually stinging nettle, perfectly edible,
Yeah.
right?
It's actually quite healthy for you.
Quite healthy as well. But let's just say let's just say, right? We were really in a business
Healthy.
of public safety and health concern and all these type of things, which is the illusionary, that is the brand that they
Justification.
justify to bring against the war on drugs. Hey, it's to keep you
Safe.
safe. Hey, youth man, you gonna ruin your life lighting that roll on. You know what? Let me help you by ruining your life for you and sending you in jail instead now. Right? So it comes down to a fact of the matter of, if we as human beings are not I don't even want to say free, because all of those words real loose right now, but if we do not have the sovereign right to imbibe and consume whatever herbs, spices, vegetables, fruits, liquids, solids, that regardless of what state of perturbation your consciousness may be in afterwards, then there is no level of freedom that exists
True.
On any level of what you might want to call
Life and existence.
yeah, there is none, because if I am not free to exercise my mind to its fullest capacity, or even lack thereof, then there is no sovereign right of any responsible adult, regardless of how much they pay back taxes or any of these things.
Well,
So are you advocating for the decriminalization of all substances, or
Which is what it did
I would say that
in Portugal.
I
Yeah,
would say
yeah.
that I would not only advocate the but I would advocate I would actually would like to see, I mean, if the world was perfect, I would like to see a formally written apology by the heads of state, by many different places that have literally stifled access of people getting medicine that works for them, and literally has been the building blocks of people's spiritual and religious practices and all of these different types of things, to deny someone the ability to experience the divine in
Yeah.
whichever way, shape, or form that they choose to, is probably one of the greatest atrocities done against mankind, but very subtly.
Yeah.
A lot of people would never feel that way,
no?
because it has never, again, it's about the dog and the leash business now.
Yeah.
Most of them walking along at perfect pace, right? But the ones that decide
you
to
see-
break off,
Yeah.
right away you will say, listen, if I can't think, because again, it's not about the use of the drugs, it's not about the use of the drugs,
The
it's about
principle.
the context of what happens to a person when they come into contact with these chemicals. It's not about the use of the drugs. The reason why we know it's not because of the use of the drugs, because a lot of these same people who mandate all these laws against them are some of the most frequent users of the drugs.
I tend to agree.
Right? So it's not about the use of the drugs. It's not that, oh my, right?
I think it's also quite interesting that modern science has shown the plethora, the many benefits of things like cannabis,
Exactly.
from glaucoma, upset stomach, epilepsy, you name it, you name it. There have also have been many promising studies on the use of psilocybin to treat depression,
Exactly.
on the use of psilocybin and even other psychedelics.
Microdosing LSD and all this
Exactly,
kind of thing.
for things like a lot of
Cluster
cognitive
headaches, something
issues.
people's begin, even cluster, like not
Yeah.
simple, but things
Yes,
like,
no, that's a very
yeah.
serious scene.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
The-
Also quitting
yeah.
addiction.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
saw some a recent
PTSD.
TED talk on that as well.
yeah.
And psychedelics apparently they do very well at
PTSD
quitting.
and trauma.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot of, you see, there's a lot of untapped potential and untouched areas of study because of the fact that it's other,
Yeah.
it's foreign.
Yeah.
Something is wrong with it inherently, apparently now,
Mhm.
because we've been
To Western culture.
to Western culture, because our culture is such that, again, you talk a certain way, you move a certain way, something is wrong with you
Right.
now.
So then we
You
come
know?
we come directly back to these models of culture that we hold in such high esteem now, as if, again, the mere fact that we have such disconnect from even knowing the full range in which our bodies are able to experience the in the sensory input of the environment around us.
Yeah.
There are people who have gone from literally the birth to the grave without ever seeing anything or putting their mind in an avenue of thought that was not sanctioned previously by their ancestral line or any type of way like that.
Yeah.
But the fact that we would have such grave like hindrances inside of us as like the as a way to kind of prevent us from harming our mental health. Because that's the main thing as a westernized society that most people are afraid of. And it's about losing their minds,
Yeah.
right? Again, I don't see, some people might say the only way you could find yourself is if you lose your mind, right? The losing of the mind is exactly what is the main collective fear of like the westernized ego, that is where it's at, right? Which is why from the time colonialization hit these specific shores here of like South America and the wider Caribbean Antilles and stuff like that, if you look geographically and from like a ethnobotanist perspective, you will see that the Caribbean, South America, is probably some of the most widely populated in terms of varieties of psychotropic and psychedelic compounds on the planet.
And that's what the
Now, when the
Indigenous
Spanish
used to use.
when the Spanish arrived here in the early days of the conquistadors and stuff like that, one of the first things that made them feel that we need to get rid of these people here more than anything else is because of the fact that they know that they couldn't be taught anything else. There was a quote from I really want to remember his name, but
Right.
it was one of the Amerindian chiefs up in Puerto Rico that they captured, and they said to him, "Is either you accept Christianity and denounce all of your gods and your traditions, or you face death." And he asked, "Well, what happens to you? Where would I go when I die as a Christian?" And they said, "To heaven." He said, "Is that where all these priests and stuff going to be?" And with that one, he said, "Well, light the fire immediately.
Yeah.
I choose no part of that," right? The thing about it is the reason why people who cannot be swayed in terms of, because their line of knowledge and information was not something that was outside the realm of direct experience. If they wanted to commune in any type of way with nature or find answers to problems they may have, their ancestral line of information would say, look to the plants, look to the mountains, look to the rivers, look to nature, these type of things. Now, when you come here with a controlling ego archetype of a human being, and you encounter people that have totally separated themselves from ego, there's
It's a hard
no
thing.
way that you can control them,
Yeah.
right?
Because everything is built on the fear.
So
which
the
comes from
fact
ego.
that
Yeah,
fact that
exactly.
we can't intellectualize to you in any form of dress up as to why you should leave behind everything that you know to yourself to be 100% true in order to then believe the stories that we are. When I say we, I mean like the products of colonialism are like used as our backbones of civilization. We come to see that there's no way that they could keep things like psychedelic access and stuff like that at the forefront of societies when they would like to continuously maintain all of these illusory concepts
Yeah, and they
of
want to
reality,
keep us in
because
fear.
Yeah.
we would be able to quite easily just call bullshit right away. No, that's not real. I've seen otherwise myself. I have, right? But remember, our civilization is one in which there's this pyramid of intellect and pyramid of knowingness then, in which there is a limited few who has all of the information, and it will somehow be trickled down. You know, like right now, we all waiting on somebody to smart enough somewhere to be
Yeah.
like, shit, this is how we solve world hunger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We kind of all sitting down. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure somebody smart enough somewhere is going to know about that. And that's exactly what the problem is, right? Because people in other forms or sectors of society would not necessarily have to wait on somebody else to decide how they should spend the majority of their time rotating around the sun on the planet.
Yeah.
You know?
You ever read the works of Terence McKenna or Aldous Huxley?
Big fan and advocate of both of their
Okay. And from hearing you speak, it
Yeah.
reminds me of a lot of their philosophy.
right? Because I mean, if you look, especially if you look at somebody like Huxley,
And Huxley
when
was just a brilliant
when
writer.
Yeah.
when
Very intelligent.
when you really start to put yourself into the mindset of these people who were like literally on the cusp of starting, as you say, a brave new world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It would seem very, very, very disenchanting to them, I believe, now that we've gone backwards from their findings. Right? Now, Huxley was able to write The Doors of Perception after his encounter with mescaline.
Yeah.
Right? One of the best grammatically and metaphorically put pieces of work that would describe, like at least some small fraction of what it's like to experience and encounter these type of things, right?
Yeah.
And after reading something like that at an age or something like I was maybe like 15 or 18 or something like that, and you read that and you say to yourself, well, why isn't anybody else talking about this? As humans, we collectively get together and pool our ideas for all different types of, I would say, the most benign and nonchalant of things that I mean does not necessarily take 100% dedication and effort from all our collective brains to come up with answers for.
It's because
But we've highly neglected one of the most important sectors then of planetary living, which is, I believe,
right.
learning to see ourselves at least in a nature that was not pre-described by even your own parents and teachers and anybody that you came into relation to at a point in time, because we all build ourselves on the ideas of other people's ideas of us. Right.
Right. And as I said earlier, persuasion is the name of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it is that we are in a society where you have to, in order for the hierarchy to be maintained, we have, the capitalist system or whatever system it might be, you have a hierarchy. Now, the thing is that, as I said earlier as well, human beings have these innate wants and needs to belong, to feel loved, to be happy.
Right.
These are things, you don't teach a child how to be happy.
Right.
A child will be happy when they see something that make them happy. A child will cry when they have to cry. We a lot of things we don't have instincts for. A lot of things we have been, through systems of education. I think we have to learn about these things. But what are the things that we are born with? We are
Right.
born with certain penchants for happiness, for pleasure, for belonging,
For
right?
learning as well.
For learning, yeah. For exploring, for curiosity.
yeah.
And the thing is that when you look at society and you ask the question why it is we have been denied the chance to discuss, why are people not discussing things like Huxley and so on and so on, or this kind of these things that these brilliant minds have put forward. And the reason is because that those things are now lost in a pool, in a pool, an ocean of other creations,
Right.
many of which are geared towards satiating the same things that probably experiences such as the ones Huxley would have spoken about, like the Doors of Perception. You're talking about psychedelic experiences. You're looking at ancient cultures and
Yeah.
how they dealt with certain things.
Right.
They cultures and civilizations over time,
Yeah.
they all had different ways of dealing with things that we think. And I watched this talk recently at TEDx, I think it was, where we saying, why do we think that our civilization is reality?
Right.
Right now, the thing is
Yeah.
that again, our reality has been littered so much with this ocean, right? That is filled with, okay, look at what we do with our daily lives, right? We want to look at Netflix and movies and enjoy sports and all these things because it's good. The art and all these things, it helps you, emotionally. It gives you entertainment and all of that.
Inspiration.
But inspiration. But the thing is, they have the system itself and the way the world has gone. They have boxed all these things into products.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what it says is this: as a human being, you will never experience the fullness of experience. So here we will give it to you. That again, that's one of the, if not the most, like,
Because a lot of
bought
these
and sold
creators, a lot of
ideas
these,
out
and let me
there.
be honest, we're talking about drugs and thing earlier and the war on drugs and thing. But the reality is, a lot of substances have helped spur creativity over eons.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
there must have been there must have been a major part of the zeitgeist and culture that would have had to deal with use of these things.
Well, if-
maybe not everybody
Well,
had to use it.
but if you
Maybe
wanna
the
get-
shaman or
exactly.
whatever. But the point is, the use and the access to this side of the experience was so important.
All right. Well, okay. I mean, I'm sure Kyle will know about this as well. The way
But
that
how-
you,
how
what
we
you,
reading on time there, Mario? Okay.
the way that we, as you're saying, like, where is there a system in place in order for us to understand what is important then, and the fact that many of the people who we hold in such high esteem have had their consciousness altered in some form, shape, or way, and it has actually shown to be better or in advancement for humans. Now, if you look back at what is the bedrock of westernized society, is really, it comes down to things like Christianity and like Greek philosophy, right? A lot of every westernized society holds
Yeah.
a very, very high esteem for Greek philosophy.
Yes, Plato and
Right.
Aristotle and all this.
So we say the greatest minds, the greatest thinkers have already existed. That is again one of the major fallacies of living in the world, that the greatest has already existed. The Beethovens have come and gone. They will no longer have that, like, benchmark of music to reach for.
Right.
The
Antiquity.
greatest thinkers have already thought their thoughts, and we just have to play catch up with them as it goes along. Now, even Plato and Socrates and Epicurus and all these people will tell you that while under their civilization in ancient Greece, they would have been people who would have attended a certain ceremonial, maybe it might have been annually or
Yeah.
whatever, known as the Eleusinian Mysteries, right? It was something that took place at the Temple of Eleusis in Greece, right? Inside of there was essentially a place in which human beings, regardless of your social class, your religious background, any of those things, you can, even if there were people who can enter, like a slave could enter, somebody there's no exemption. However, you're only allowed to enter once in life. When you go to take part in the ceremony, you literally come out of it with a greater understanding of at least the stories that you have been told before, in some type of way that you could relate it in direct experience. Now, the mystery that they were taking part in, which was literally the catalyst for some of the greatest philosophers and all of these type of things that we have such high esteem for in our part of the Western world, were actually done through the use of psychedelic chemicals. So Socrates and Plato and your Aristotles and all these people were all participants of the Eleusinian Mysteries.
Right.
And they themselves engaged in a a form of we would call it like natural LSD, where it is actually it would be more LSA, which was happened because of certain fungus that formed on rye, right? When
Right.
stored in these great vats, like in different places, and because of the fact that the fungus was able to be isolated and then chemically concocted into something that a drink that they would call the kaikion, right? And when you drink from the kaikion, reality is revealed. Essentially, is what the whole cell
Like
of
what-
the
like
Eleusinian
Origin,
mysteries
on the
is.
battlefield.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So all of the bedrocks of our great philosophical minds and the things that have helped us to see beyond your standard notions of reality, like even things like Plato's cave and these type of stuff, were all birthed through the psychedelic experience.
As far
Right.
as far as I'm aware, even the ancient Egyptian culture, they also had the Blue Lotus, I believe.
Well,
it
of course,
was.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the thing about it is that we tend to, as a westernized and civilized, ego-driven society, throw away all of these perfectly, like, embedded natural ways of forming a relationship with yourself, your peers, the nature as a whole, and engraving your human experience into be something greater than you wake up, you drive in your car, you go to your job, you come back home, you make sure your bills paid, you hopefully get enough sleep, and then you start it all over again. The idea that this, at least to most people, is
That is
something
life. That is reality. That is how it
should be accepted.
is, and it should always be.
Is again, it is one of the greatest tragedies that would
Definitely.
that we could record on this planet. It even surpasses. I mean, it's not to put down anything, but everybody
Well,
is
it's
a
the
slave. It's
It's
not
the
just the
truth.
transatlantic
It's-
slave system
It's the truth.
was a tragedy. It's not just the fact that black people being marginally discriminated upon
Yeah.
the planet. It's not just the fact that children don't have the same rights as like adults who pay taxes.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's the fact that our brand of living is one in which we only use the lens of our problem solving direction part of our brain, which essentially is just an offset of the ego, which was formed in the human psyche as a response to threat and danger that we may not be able to readily identify
Right.
within the wilder side of living. And that has now evolved into, you no longer have eyes and visual acuity in order to sense when a predator is in your presence, but now you use your eyes to count money, you
Yeah.
know, or you use your eyes to look at a movie or something
Yeah.
like that, and we believe that these
Well,
are
that's development.
yeah,
You see, we are comfortable. Now, now there's the thing. You see, the argument for capitalism, the argument for the neoglobalism and all of this, right? Neoliberal thinking and the fact that well, everybody has that innate right to become rich and powerful, and everybody has that opportunity.
The American
and
dream.
The American dream,
That's
and
in a
the land of
nutshell.
the free, and
yeah.
and the thing is that that all those things, right, is just okay. So the land of the free, America, right? This dream, right? This is the biggest story now. It's the biggest illusion
Yeah.
that has the world running the way it is now. It's like, yes, that works for some people, but it cannot work for everybody now.
Yeah.
How do we account for those who the dream become a nightmare?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because logistically speaking, everybody cannot start up the newest Twitter and Google and this kind of
Right.
thing, you know, everybody can't. They'll be like, they'll see a Indian boy come from India, and it's like he was poor. They spend the last few money to go and now he's here on Google. It's like, so what is the excuse for everybody else? Like, so with the so how everybody going to do that?
Yeah.
You know, mathematically speaking,
Yeah.
you know, you cannot think for a second that everyone is going to come into that path, you know, and the problem is that, you know, as I said, the entire system is built around the fact that if you stay within the lines of it and you through your own enterprise, you don't go XYZ way, that is, you will get your reward in the end, and that in itself is proven to be a lie.
Right.
Because we have children today who have done the right things, right? They did not go online in the
Yeah.
gang, and they did not join the gang, and they did not run drugs or whatever,
Yeah.
and they have the degree,
Yeah.
right? They have nothing for them to do. There's nothing in Trinidad. You're seeing it. We had our gate approval, okay? You know, we got about 10 years, I would say, or so, of people who got free tertiary education. Let me say about 10 years. Let me say maybe
Yeah,
they get
about
dollar for dollar for some of it or whatever.
Mhm.
But we had a lot of people accessing tertiary education in University of West Indies, SAMS, SBCS, all these things, right? Then now came the fact that now too much people have degree, have to have a master's.
Yeah.
And the point is and then, you know, my whole point of this is that this whole thing about going to school and getting a degree and you're going to get a job after, because the main thing you're doing it for is to get a good job, to be a good worker and all this. It's more and more so. It's a lie,
So
right? Because there is not a, you cannot see that there is an inner drive in the runnings of the system to make sure that this what you're selling is a reality.
well, right. So as you put it there, I think it was at the end of our George Carlin special, he had say, it has to be
One of the
called
best comedians ever,
yeah. He
yes.
say, Carlin said, like, it has to be called the American dream, right? Because you had to be sleeping in order to believe it's reality.
That's good.
You understand?
Yeah.
That's why it's called the American dream.
Yeah,
because
they
you
be
have
sleeping,
to
yeah.
be sleeping to
Yeah, I
believe
remember
it's
that.
real. You
Yeah,
understand?
like Colin. That's a big Colin line.
So to me,
it's called the
again,
American dream because you have to be sleeping.
all of those words and that word play. Why should, like, again, they never said it's the American reality. They said it's the dream.
Yeah.
We don't have to defend if the dream didn't go as planned as to you. We, like, if you understand what I'm saying,
And you see, it's all
there's no
ego-driven,
onus on
man.
them to
Yeah.
it is as almost as if the language, as Kyle fully well knows, is only the language that makes it illegal or not, like, or that binds it to law or not. So they use the language very, very selectively in order to keep people under a certain level of you know, compliance then with everything, because again, it's the dream is about the fact that, as you said, all human beings would like to find a place. America was one of the people that says, well, here's the place for you all who looking to find the place. But then at the same point in time, we know that we can't find a proper place if we had to go and evict people in the first place in order to make ourselves a home. So if you never had dominion over the land in the first place to give it away, then it's kind of like, well, I mean, it just is like, it almost as if the same way you would do a landfill and on reclaimed land, it wasn't yours to begin with. So when the ocean takes it
The
back,
atrocities against
is
indigenous
not,
populations,
it's really not up.
and atrocities, all the atrocities of the past, there's no way to write it. You can't write it, right? You can't make right. You can't. There's nothing to do to help.
True,
that.
but I mean, at least you could give them as a little holiday, man.
Yeah.
Something.
And the talks of reparations will keep on going because
Yeah.
there have been. I mean, notice when the Jews went through their atrocity, they
Yeah.
now they have their nation of
Yeah,
Israel
yeah.
and all of that, which in itself has its own things going on, and
Well,
that
you
is
see,
bad. That is bad,
which
right?
yeah.
But the point is, it all comes down to the power and the greed and the hierarchy
Yeah.
and keeping it together, and it's falling apart right now. You know,
Right.
People are
course.
noticing. That is why right now you're getting this feeling when they're watching the news and things, because
But-
things falling
But
apart.
so much so, it's so
Yeah.
strange to see, as much as it's falling apart, right?
They will never stop and say what. Let me look change direction to make sure that our you know?
the thing about it is this, all right. So, again, as you was talking about McKenna, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we look at it as a perspective, let me just see.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just see. The state of the world is in shit. Everybody's crazy. It looks like it's all going to hell in a handbasket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody were to open this door right now and they happen to be like a woman giving birth on the floor, just being out of timing,
Yeah.
and they happen to walk in mid like
Right.
process,
Right.
it would look like some crazy shit is going on. It would be like, dog, like
What
horse,
the hell?
like what, because there's like screaming, crying, blood,
Yeah.
people frantic.
Yeah.
But what essentially happens at the end of that birthing process? And it's all just beauty and tears and
Yeah.
love and.
Yeah.
Tenderness.
But you had to leave it and let it happen. What will happen if you intercede too quickly in our birthing process? You have a fair chance of endangering the life of both the child and the mother. You have to allow nature to take its course, and you sit back and do not allow your biases to tell you when to intercede. And that's exactly what the problem is with most people. That's why people say shit like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because everybody swears they know what's best for other people. And if we just go back to the analogy of the woman giving birth, the only person who will know when she's ready is that person herself. We can't tell them when it's like what to do, we can say as much as we want, hold on, breathe, this, that, and the other, but you cannot force the process to either stop happening or to happen any quicker, right? And if it is that
It's true.
we
You know,
in this emergency room right now and everybody looking like they're losing their shit, but in a strange kind of way, we don't really know enough of the process to see that first of all, this hasn't happened before, and then the outcome after it is this, that, and the other, or B, is this a brand novel thing
Yeah.
that we are now faced with? And then if we go back to our naivety again, I mean, it's very, very naive to believe that this is the first time these type of problems have faced humans, regardless of what level of technological advancement they act or
Right.
not, or whatever the
Right.
hell it is. So, at least to my understanding, the best conspiracy theory to have would be that everything will be fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because then, if you're unknown about the future, again, it's like one of those one of those Zen master sayings, like,
Alan Watts.
yeah, like, worry is a waste of the imagination, no dread.
Yeah.
Like, so you might as well, if everything looking hectic, you're unsure about everything, just close your eyes and breathe and go with it. And again, one of the only systems in which you would ever come into contact with that will show you the relevance of having to breathe and just go with emotions is,
Yeah. This-
3 to 5 grams deep on
Yeah.
on a psilocybin mushroom trip in silent darkness. You will have to just give in to the process
You see,
and trust nature. You
prob-
you literally can't beat that method. Give in and trust in nature. They have no, I have never seen any other thing work in any other applied form of physical or metaphorical or any of those things. The fact that we believe that there's someone to take control, somebody is in charge, something is going to go because we feel a certain way about it. Reality has no obligation to tend to our emotions and fears and all of those type of things. It is what
Yeah.
it is. It is what it will be. I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
it's crazy now,
yeah.
but again,
Mm-hmm.
from the perspective of ego-driven humans,
Right.
which have a need to feel that they want to grasp permanence in the universe, obviously it will seem as if
Yeah.
we at the mercy of the wind right now.
And
But
all
it's
these
not such
and
a bad thing,
all yeah, well, all these things will be so hard for certain people to grasp. Not because they can't, it's because of conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been conditioned through so many different systems. The education system
Yeah.
is one that, education could use a lot of work in America, here, wherever it be. Here, I mean, a lot of work.
Mhm.
But work is one thing. Is that what is the focus? What is the focus of? Why is it so hard for certain for the why is the rates are what they are? It's because a lot of children cannot see where's their place in the education system.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think that also links to the fact that most people, I wouldn't say everybody, but the vast majority of people all living within their own echo chamber.
Right.
Whether it's the religious philosophy, whether it's the educational system, whether it's the neighbors, whether it's the family.
Yeah.
People tend to seek people that reinforce their own beliefs, and they tend to disregard persons or messages or anything that contradicts that.
100%.
Especially when those things, your religious upbringing, your education, your family, your neighborhood, community, especially when those things within them, there is a certain power,
Yeah.
structure
Yeah.
that is assigned to it.
Yeah.
And through that power, then there's some
And there are benefits to
benefits
be
and
to be
reward
reaped.
system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you have these reward systems in place,
Yeah.
and it all comes down to that the individual has to profit themselves through. When you think about other people thinking, other people who, and this is just reality. This is just reality. Even you think about what some people, they base their lives on, the religious teachings they base their life on and thing, right? Whether it be whatever religion
Or political ideologies.
or political ideology, right? So they're right again, right?
Yeah.
Good, true, because not everybody could be religious.
And I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, both of them are the same.
Yeah.
thing, right? It's not really like, it's not cats and dogs. Now. It's the same thing.
Yes, and the thing is, correct.
Yeah.
When you think about that, there are so many people who base their lives, their choices and movements and their decisions on these things, these ideologies,
Yeah.
right? And these ideologies are those which have lines which cannot be crossed.
Yeah.
You have lines which cannot be crossed, right? Whether right, there are lines of how to what is a man, right?
Right.
Right? What is success,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is good,
Yeah.
what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. Obviously, order and society need some kind of order in order to like you
To
don't
flourish.
we have come a certain way now. The capitalist system, right? And today's culture would always use the things that well, look how much of what we have today.
Yeah. Technology.
We have
Yeah.
all this, right?
Live streams
Right?
and whatnot.
We have it, and that's how so much more hospitals and so much more healthcare and people living longer. And right now in the pandemic, if it was back in the day with the next thing, so much more people would have died or whatever they would want to say. And they use this now to reinforce, right,
Yeah. The
the
pre-existing
pre-existing
notions.
notions, which
Yeah.
is that we are on the right track,
Mm-hmm.
that we should not look to deviate and fight up. That I am going to not hell in a handbasket, but somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is because of what I understand, right? But when we look at that, and now that must come at the expense of others.
Yeah. And that's the
No
problem.
way. Yeah. Because
That is the problem.
between
It is
us
built
here,
on the expense of others.
Is there any way that you would see it working otherwise? It actually can't. It's a self-sustained system.
What is that? Say that again. Say it louder for the mic to hear.
The same the inequalities that exist
Sure.
within the systems are what drives them to begin with now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there is no
Exactly.
there is no conversation of how do we have the system
Work better.
without right. So that's why there has to be a new form of a new ocean then to immerse yourself in, and you
Right.
can't transcend these ideas of politics and religion and all of these things into some void, as if Yeah, let's just do away with that, and we'll see what happens when it comes now. There is actually a direction which at least has been shown to us by the so-called quote-unquote uncivilized members of the
Savage.
planet, savages that were, you know, previously inhabitants of the same species that we call our home right now. And the people in those, yes, I mean, it's not really so much of a coincidence that they were able to live and flourish and be communal without like the least amount of that type of competition and headbuttedness between people, where it literally has to get to the point of, in order for me to feel good about my existence, I definitely need to find someone to step on
Yeah.
to get a better view now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And again, I believe that is really comes down. I could only speak from my experience, but unless you are able to have some type of, you see how you were talking about lines that are uncrossable based on tradition and culture, unless you are able as a human to transcend those boundaries and like dissolve them completely, then there would be no way that you could actually be wholeheartedly empathetic or sympathetic or any of those things towards your counterparts in your civilization, because of the fact that the operating system in which we work on is ego OS, right? And they, if unless you change that mode and you start using different programs within it, it does not matter what chain of commands you give inside the ego OS, it is always going to read out the same thing to you. There's no way to break down a system that has been designed to work like that. We need to torch the computers
Yeah.
and
Other
build new
people can
models,
be like, well,
right?
mumbo jumbo,
Yeah.
ting. But you see, that's because, again,
That's what we've been taught to
Yeah.
think about
and
these
there's
kind of
a,
things.
there's a, again, the ocean now. There's so much
Yeah.
ways you can look at things, but some people cannot understand why it is people would choose to look at things this way now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not because, and I see people say virtue signaling and ting, and it's like, so what is not virtue signaling? What is not,
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
what isn't virtue signaling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you, the same post you're making about virtue signaling is how virtue signaling acting itself now. So, oh God, I mean, like,
At least the hope that we could have in terms of some type of change is the fact that like brethren, it's like my boy here is like an active member of like the helping hand of society,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
If we could see that there is people that's relatable to us, you may listen, when we were growing up and you hear any kind of talk about any kind of law, any kind of thing like that, automatically you dissect yourself from that entire equation. It's like, I don't know anything about that. Pretty sure somebody else will. And we hope, let's hope that they have public interest at hand. Now, when you could sit and relate to somebody who is an active member, and you could see with your own eyes and hear with
Exactly.
your own ears that there are people out there who are promoting ideas and trying to get a new type of reform in previously untouchable, archaic, lockdown type of professions, right? We wouldn't have been able to, you wouldn't be able to have a discussion with a lawyer 25 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago who fits
Yeah.
this description,
Yeah.
Right, and before we
true.
had Blinks,
You understand what I'm saying?
as economists,
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
So the fact that these things are happening is as much like evidence that you can see on a grander scale then. But if you look at it fractally and you say, well, listen, if we could find a man like Kyle to be a lawyer, coming from his background of Trinidad and Tobago, where we know that there's a stigma attached to those things. We know that there's like all of these things, but you still involve yourself in it anyway, and not for the margin of profiting off of people, but actually helping people. Then now when somebody asks me, well, what's your thing about law and all this kind of stuff? I wouldn't just respond the way I would have, like, let me say 15 years ago. We'll just burn out
Exactly.
all of that and this. No, I know there are people that I could call,
Mhm.
speak to personally, that would
Exactly.
be able to educate and inform directly
Mhm.
without any type of subjective opinions on, well, what I think
Right.
is this and that and the other, but could actually engage the public and
Right.
show them that, listen, you need to have some type of interest in these type of things, because as you could see, is one of us
Mhm.
that is here.
I hear
You understand what I'm saying?
It's real important to note that that in all different professions now, there are a lot more open-minded and forward-thinking people,
Yeah.
and who are open and willing to discuss things that before would have been pushed to the wayside
Yeah.
and called, well, not even regarded as anything. It would be like,
Trash.
it's trash now.
Trash.
Yeah.
And I think that today's episode really would bring all that home, seeing that we went from one end of the spectrum to the next
Yeah.
on all around it, because at the end of the day, we cannot expect any of the challenges we are facing right now as a country, society, and a world to be figured out by some one person with a master plan.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
And we cannot look at just right. You cannot look at the incident, which is the issue, and not think about all the different factors that flow,
I would have led up to
influence,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
and led up to that point now.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely no argument that comes without caveats now.
Exactly.
There's none. You could try. You could pick the most. You could pick the most benign topics,
Mm-hmm.
and you will have to still justify very, very, very bold claims in between. But again, we coming back to the same social issues, and you want people to think about, all right. So what am I supposed to learn by this whole upheaval from society and this going against the government and all this type of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that we could learn is that, well, we have to do better.
Definitely.
We don't have it figured out. Nobody has it figured out. Nobody ever has it figured out, and probably nobody is going to figure it out.
But we have to.
But
we
you have
to
to try to
have
do
to try.
better, right?
That's something I agree on.
And it's up to us. Is literally isn't it? It can't be from anywhere else, because of the fact that is literally we are not in a playing field where it is level. We are a team of like minions against giants.
Mm-hmm.
But what going on is every one of the minions wanna run off and fight their own battle on their own. That's
Exactly.
never going to happen like that.
Mm-hmm.
It has to have some form of unity between the civilians of the planet, because there are civilians on the planet and there are non-civilians. Like anybody in the army is not
Yeah.
a civilian, So there
Yeah.
are civilians and then there are
Yeah.
non-civilians. So the civilians of the planet, the people who have vested interest in, having good clean water to drink,
Right.
housing, education,
Mm-hmm.
facilities for impoverished people, all of those type of things, is high time that we stop relying on people to intercede, to educate on how to fix these things, but use all of the resources that we have around us to empower yourself with some kind of level of some type of level of, if it's not intellectual, but emotional stability, that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't just always fold under the pressure and tend to look towards a leader anytime shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So unless we could do that, it will always have people that, kind of up and away from all of the ideals that we claim to share as a collective. But as we see, I mean, time will tell
Yeah.
how the greater population sees these type of messages and the pertinence that it would have to their lives.
Well, at least I could say that forums like this, like the Heights Room.
Yeah.
You know, they are here for these thoughts to be aired. You know, and I'm grateful for you all you being here today.
Yeah.
You know,
Grateful to be here as well.
Yeah, man.
yeah, it was a good vibes.
Yeah.
I hope everybody have their battery and flashlight and
Yeah, boy.
bricks and
Hey,
so on.
Yeah, that's that. It's
Yeah.
one thing to the next.
It's
Yes,
one
you
thing to the
can't,
next,
you can't
right?
let up. You can't
So you
lay
have to
guard
have your
down.
mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have your mask,
mask,
right? And
Flashlight.
right? All the different things.
Right.
I think I have on nibbles to
Stuck,
eat.
stuck away,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
in
yeah.
case.
I think
Right.
it's on nibbles we have, right?
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so
Important.
that will bring us to the end of today's Heights. We want to thank Kyle and Jal for being here. Hope everybody safe out there. We will pick up later.
All right.